Every day in the United States, we treat over 34 billion gallons of wastewater. But here's the catch. Most of the infrastructure doing that work is over 50 years old, and the funding to fix or upgrade it is falling dangerously short. Most people don't know this, but the system we rely on could be just one storm, one breakdown, or one budget cut away from failure. Across the country, wastewater utilities are quietly reaching a breaking point. The pipes are old, the equipment is failing, the treatment plants are being asked to meet stricter environmental standards with fewer staff and outdated systems. The funding just isn't keeping up. So why should anyone care about wastewater? Because this invisible system protects everything we value: our health, our environment, our economy, our children's future. When wastewater isn't properly treated, it doesn't just disappear. It can contaminate rivers, lakes, pollute drinking water sources, and shut down recreation. And the longer we ignore it, the more expensive and dangerous the consequences become. Right now, there's a massive gap between what our wastewater systems need and what they're actually getting. Nationally, the EPA estimates we need over $270 billion just to maintain and upgrade existing wastewater infrastructure. WEF has identified a funding gap of about $110 billion in 2024, and that number is expected to grow to $194 billion by 2030. In a recent survey, utility leaders overwhelmingly said that they lack the financial resources to keep up with regulatory demands and population growth and extreme weather events. Between 2016 and 2024, infrastructure needs jumped by 45%. More systems are aging, new contaminants are being discovered, and regulations are getting tighter, yet funding has failed to keep pace. Here's the part that surprises most people. Your water and sewer bill doesn't fully cover the cost of the system. People assume that their monthly bill takes care of everything: the maintenance, the upgrades, the permits, the staff. But in reality, many utilities are operating on the edge, doing the best they can with the outdated infrastructure and unpredictable funding. It's easy to forget how much goes into keeping wastewater systems running. And that's before you even talk about meeting stricter environmental regulations. Add to that unfunded mandates, inflation, and capital impacts like flooding or drought, and it becomes clear. Relying solely on ratepayers without additional funding sources just isn't sustainable. So how do we fix it? How do we go from barely surviving to building a future-proof system that serves generations to come? First, we need to rethink how we fund wastewater infrastructure. That means pushing for greater access to federal and state grants, advocating for low-interest loans, and in some cases, adjusting rates to reflect the true cost of service. But funding alone isn't enough. We also need to invest in people: operators, electricians, mechanics, lab techs. These are all essential workers who keep everything flowing, and without them, no amount of technology will save us. We need stronger workforce, we need development programs, better training pipelines, and partnerships with schools and trade programs and community colleges to bring the next generations. Utilities must also improve how they communicate with the public. When rate increases are needed, we have to tell the story why, not just about what it costs, but what it prevents: pollution, health risks, service outages. To help bridge the gap, the EPA funds projects through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. At the same time, the WIFIA program recently announced $7.5 billion in available low-interest financing, enough to support about $15 billion in new water projects. But the 2026 White House budget proposes cutting $2.46 billion from state revolving funds. Why? Officials argue these programs overlap with existing options like WIFIA and USDA grants, and point to the large investments made through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The administration says it's time for states to take on more responsibility in funding their own infrastructure. But with growing needs and aging systems, many in the water sector worry that reducing SRF funding now could widen the gap between critical needs and available resources. There are success stories out there. Communities that secured grants, invested in automation, built apprenticeship programs, or upgraded aging plants without raising rates drastically. It can be done, but it takes a vision and a willingness to ask before crisis forces our hand. To get a better understanding of how these challenges play out on the ground, we sat down with two utility leaders who are facing them head on. They shared their firsthand experiences, what's working, what's not, and how they're adapting funding strategies, managing public expectations, and planning for the future. Because behind every statistic is a real community and real people working to keep clean water flowing.
Can we take everything that we hope to do, what the consultants are recommending that we maintain, what we are preparing on a capital side to improve? Can we hire more people? Do we replace the people we've got? All of the inputs that go into what it's going to cost, we have to make sure that that fits in that 2 to 3% increase year over year. And we structure some things and lay it out, because you know time flies. And fiscal 27 is going to be here before you know it, and so is fiscal 28. In our business, you know that it's really all about the fixed costs. We've got infrastructure that we build to meet, I don't know, you know better than I do, maximum demand, average daily flows, all those metrics, right? We're building the size of our facility to accommodate all of that. Now, if flows go down or flows go up, that pipe is still there. Those pumps, the U sides, they're still there. And we have to pay the debt on that. We'll talk more about how we finance, but that's how we pay for all of that. So it's the fixed costs that are really the driver for rates. We have a number of strategies that we can employ to provide the lowest cost of capital. That's kind of our primary goal. But to remember that it isn't just how much, it's how much and when. But when we issue a series of bonds, let me just start with a vanilla fixed rate 30-year bond series. We call it an issuance. When we issue $100 million for 30 years, we're going to structure each of those 30 years with a certain amount of principal that we're going to plan to pay back. So if it's 30 years and it's $100 million, nearly $3 million every year we're going to pay. When we look at our forecasts and we see FY30 is challenging, we may back off of that $3 million, put it a little sooner or a little later, and then when we find years that are lower than the 2% projected increase, we'll put more principal in that year. So we're able to structure the repayment of that bond series, not just flat principal amounts every year, but kind of surgically, so that in the end, that debt service, together with wages and salaries and everything else, gets us between 2 and 3% as an increase.
And the impact of not raising your rates for a year.
Well, then you're deferring infrastructure improvements, and it begins to cost you even more money. That old adage about a stitch in time saves 9 is really true.
What agency partnerships have been critical in helping you access funding, like the state revolving fund, administrators, USDA reps, the regional EPA offices?
So we've looked at all of them. So for the state revolving funds, we've been actively working with them for our Mac Lagoon project. Again, moratorium, compromise lagoon, try to help us out here. So we have gotten some commitments from them. We're also looking at congressional direct spending, the CDS fund. Right now, that's in limbo. Again, we just had a new administration transition, and just like any other administration or new CEO, they have different, where they want to spend their money. So, I'm hoping that Colorado still gets a pocket of money for water and wastewater services that I can tap into. We've also been working with the USDA on trying to get a loan for our MAC project, basically because they stated that they can give us a low interest, 40-year loan, 50-year loan, something like that, And then no guarantees, but there can be up to a 50% matching grant. So if I can get a $4 million loan from USDA to build my lagoons, then really I only have to make up $2 million in service fees. And over a 40-year period, that's doable.
In the past 5 years, what have been the most effective funding sources for your utility?
So, we are customer-based driven, so we are definitely all, sewer monthly invoices. Beyond that, know that the number of customers that we have for all three PIDs does not allow the PIDs to operate on a positive cash flow. So we have an economic driver in place. I just don't have the population to kickstart it yet. So, aside from looking at local impact fees, which are taxes, mill levies, we've also been tossing around the idea of creating a plant investment fee. And so, where, say that $40 a month goes strictly towards our operating budget.
Thankfully, communities aren't alone in this. There are more funding sources available today than most people realize. The challenge is knowing where to look and how to access them. When asked how they fund capital projects, utilities across the country shared a range of strategies. The most common answer? Rate increases, used by nearly 67% of respondents. Grants were close behind at 59%, followed by state revolving funds at nearly 55%. Bonds are another major tool, used by 51% of utilities. Other approaches included drawing on reserves, 39%, leveraging operational savings, 35%, and turning to WIFIA resources, which were used by about 39% of utilities. Less common, but still present, were other loan programs at 24.5%, and a small group, around 6%, reported they simply didn't know where their capital funding comes from. The message is clear. Utilities are piecing together funding from wherever they can, but for many, the pressure to raise rates remains the most reliable and the most burdensome. So we've seen the problem. We've seen what's possible. Now the question is, what are we going to do about it? If you're a utility leader, advocate. Advocate for your funding. Advocate for your staff, for your community's future. Don't be afraid to tell your story. The more personal you can be, the more likely is that you'll get funding. Show the value of what you do every day. If you're a board member or an elected official, listen. When your utility says that they need support, believe them. If you're a regulator or a policymaker, keep investing. Streamline the process. Break down barriers. Make it easier for communities to access the help that they need before it hits a crisis. And if you're a member of the public, get informed. This system serves you every single day, whether you think about it or not. Support it. Share it. Speak up when it matters. Because the truth is, the future of wastewater isn't just in the hands of engineers and operators. It's in all of ours. Every day, 34 billion gallons of wastewater is treated in the United States, quietly, efficiently, and invisibly. It's one of the greatest public health achievements in history, and one of the most underappreciated. We don't need to wait for a crisis to act. We don't need to settle for the bare minimum. We can fund our future with smarter planning, stronger advocacy, and a shared belief that clean water and safe communities are worth the investment. Because when we invest in wastewater, we're not just maintaining infrastructure, we're protecting ecosystems. We're building resilience and we're investing in people. The next time you flush, remember, there's a whole world behind that handle. Let's not leave it behind.